Hi, and welcome to another edition of Tips from Scott from Dog Training Depot. This week, we'd like to cover tip number 4, how to obtain reliable long-term behaviors using the 3 Ds of dog training. What are the 3 Ds? Duration, distance, and distractions. Introduction of the 3 Ds in the proper sequential order is absolutely a critical skill to learn when you're training dogs. And most people get this wrong because their trainers show them the wrong way, because their trainers have been trained the wrong way. Now, the proper sequence or order for introduction on a new behavior is duration always comes first. Distance comes second, and the last thing we want to introduce to a new behavior is always distractions. Now, the typical scenario that's taught wrong by most trainers is, I'll give you an example. Normally, in basic obedience, most trainers teach sit and down in your first week's session. So then they give you homework, send you home, and you are to practice sit and down. Now, transitioning from that first week in basic obedience, they will then teach stay in the second week. Now, here's the issue with directly moving into stay and introducing the 3 Ds in the improper sequence. What happens is that first week when you've been given your homework and you work with that dog on sit and down, not only has the dog learned the visual and or verbal cues for those commands, but you have actually embedded a video or a photograph in the dog's mind of what a proper sit is and how it looks from their perspective in terms of distance from you. Note the picture on the left. Okay, this is transitioning to the stay, but the dog is in a sit, he's off leash, and he's going to sit where it's ergonomically convenient for him to receive a reward, because most people do train with rewards. So it's going to be on a dog that size, 1.5 feet to 2 feet away from the handler. Now, transitioning the second week during a traditional yank and crank or leash correction class, here's what they do. They introduce the 3 Ds into the wrong order on this behavior. So the dog has learned sit, and he has this motion picture or this photograph in his mind of what a proper sit is, so that anyone who gives him that command, he's going to sit the same distance away from that person. Now, all of a sudden, the rules get changed by your traditional trainers, and they don't give the dog any cue ahead of time that the rules are going to change. So remember, most people train using leash correction. So the right-hand picture shows a dog in a sit with the leash attached. Now, what's going to happen is the dog sits, and then they give a new command, which the dog has no clue what it means, of stay, and they immediately add distance first, not duration. Now, here's what's going to happen. That violates that mental image the dog has of what a proper sit is. So the minute that trainer or handler takes a step or two backwards, since it violates that distance photograph in the dog's mind, he's going to stand up, close the gap, and sit back down again. But the minute he stands up, a leash correction or yank and crank is what I call them, trainer gives him a leash correction, confusing the dog and slowing down the learning process. So here's the right way to do it. How you want to introduce duration first, followed by distance. In the example that I gave you, we were talking about transitioning from a sit to a stay. So what you're going to want to do is have the dog in a sit, and all week long, after the first week of basic obedience, you've been sit, yes, reward, sit, yes, reward, sit, yes, reward. Now you simply begin to add duration first. Now you make him wait for that positive reinforcer, whether it's a word or a click or whatever it is. So instead of sit, Yes, reward. He's going to go sit. Yes, reward. Sit. Yes, reward. Stretch that out to about anywhere between 11 to 15 seconds. The next step is to begin to add the distance, okay? At this point now, you have him sit, you give him the visual cue for a stay, which to me, what I use in my classes is the stop sign from a police officer in front of the dog's nose or face. And what you're going to want to do is take a half a step backwards and then yes, and reward. And repeat that several times. Sit, give him some duration, take a half a step back, yes, and reward him. Next, you want to take a half a step back and lean slightly backwards. Remember, you're going to leave that one leg planted in place so that you don't violate the dog's image of what a proper sit is. Now you're giving him a cue that the rules are changing. Hey, pay attention, something's different here. After you give him several repetitions of a half a step back and then leaning backwards, then you take your right foot and give it the second half step back so that now you've taken a full half step back away from the dog. You do that for several repetitions and then you take a full step. And you just work that to 3 giant steps and now the dog is not only sitting but staying. Okay? So what are the end results? What does this look like on a dog, particularly as I teach off lead? What does the stay look like? Well, you could put a dog next to a patio here. This is what it's going to look like. You can have a group of dogs in a class session. This is the beginning of a stay exercise. This happens to be a down stay, but it could be a sit stay, or even the next photograph is going to show you a small group of dogs in a stand stay. That's what it looks like. Happy training. This is Scott Cook with Dog Training Depot. Have a blast with your dog.